you know, we are the hardcore these days. WoW is brilliant right now. Dragonflight is amazing right now. Like, genuinely good expansion. Arguably the best WoW has ever been, in my opinion. Like, it's definitely up there with the best iterations of WoW. Like, the game is fundamentally very good right now. People are enjoying the game in a way that they haven't since Legion. And, you know, Legion is one of the all-time best expansions, right? People love this shit. People only have good words to say about Dragonflight, right? Well, mostly, you know. But it's dead. The game's dead. I don't mean dead as in, you know, a dead body, but I mean as in subs are right down. Views on content is right down. You know, you only have to look at, like, not just my channel. Like, obviously, views are way down on my channel. And, you know, part of that is people not watching videos. But part of that is also that, you know, I'm not putting out as many videos as I used to. And that has a big effect as well. And, like, but you look at someone like Preach's WoW content and Bellilar's WoW content, and views are way, way down. Way down. You can see it on Twitch with stream views and stuff. And that's a pretty good sign that people just aren't playing the game right now. And I don't think that's surprising. I don't think it's surprising after Shadowlands. Shadowlands was like the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people. If WoW survives, then 9.1 will go down as the patch that almost killed WoW. And if WoW doesn't survive, 9.1 will go down as the patch that killed WoW. So it's tough, man. It's really tough. And, you know, and it's frustrating because the game is so good. Like, in a way, it would kind of be easier if the game was bad right now. If the game was terrible, that would be brilliant. To the extent where I'm like, I feel like, you know, even if views are really down, and even if, like, you know, people playing the game is really down, at the end of the day, and I've always said this, I would rather a smaller player base but a good game than a big player base but a bad game. Because, yeah, I'm a content creator and I make my living out of it, but also, before any of that, I'm a fan of the game and I'm a player. I'm a gamer, right? So I'd much rather a better game. And if that means that our videos get less views, well, obviously I'd like them to have more views. I'd like WoW content across them. Because, like, I look at our videos sometimes, I look at the views that they get, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's a bit disappointing. And then I look at other channels, and, like, it's all comparable. You know, everyone's getting those kind of views. You know, views that you'd expect in like the pomp of BFA, videos that you'd expect to get 250,000 views even. You know, they're getting like 80, 90,000 views. You're kind of lucky if they break 100. And that's the same across all creators across the board. With the exception of, like, very specific few, right? Like, an Asmongold video is still always going to get, like, 400,000 views. It is what it is, right? And, like, please, I'm not complaining. It just is what it is. It is what it is. And I feel good. I prefer making content now. It's much more satisfying making content now than in Shadowlands, for sure. Do you think it's because we're in post-pandemic now? No, I think it's because Shadowlands really, really wore people out. For whatever reason, and most of them were good reasons, there was like, with 9.1, there was the perfect fucking storm of shit, you know? You had, like, so many things come together. It was the second, for a lot of the player base, it was the second disappointing expansion in a row. It was the longest wait we'd ever had from an opening patch to a major other patch. You know, we waited almost, like, I think it was 8 months in the end for 9.1. 8 months. Like, obscene. Crazy. Like, no content. And, you know, I believe that 9.0 was a pretty good patch, to be honest. But no opening patch is 8 months good. Just can't do it. And that's even forgetting all of the other problems that Shadowlands had. Exactly. But, you know, just the biggest thing was 8 months. It took 8 months. And people were getting edgy. People were getting annoyed. People were like, there was nothing to talk about except the things that annoyed them. You know? Because after 8 months, you've done everything that you enjoy. The only thing left to talk about is stuff that annoys you. And stuff that you don't like. Shadowlands suffered the WoD fate. Too much time with too little content. It was worse than WoD in that respect, honestly. Yeah, 10.1 is coming out 100 days sooner than 9.1 did, and it's had 2 patches in between, both of which were better than 9.05. Like, both of which were way more substantial than 9.05. And 10.1 is still coming out 100 days before 9.1 did in the grand scheme of things. Exactly. So there was this. The huge wait was a massive big deal. And the fact that people didn't like the concept of Shadowlands. It was a pretty oppressive concept in many ways. It didn't feel like an open world to explore. It felt like a collection of theme park things, which would have been fine if you didn't have 8 months to do it. And so you had that. And then in the meantime, you had like the explosion in popularity of Final Fantasy XIV, which was definitely obviously linked to people being disappointed in Shadowlands and running out of things to do in Shadowlands. And then you had the scandal, which was fucking horrible, and I think just destroyed a lot of people's enthusiasm for Blizzard anything, and rightfully so, to be honest. You know, like, a lot of people were just suddenly like, well, I feel absolutely horrible about doing anything to do with this company, and unlike in previous times when they've also done disgusting stuff, this time I'm really not having that much fun in the game, and so it's actually incredibly easy to not play the game right now. It's actually incredibly easy to make a very easy moral decision on this. You know? Because it's not like, you know, wow, Blizzard have always been shitty. Blizzard have always been a terrible company, and Activision as well. But there's always that thing of like, yeah, but I enjoy the game. And so for a lot of people, it suddenly became an incredibly easy decision to just be like, nah. And that's not even the end. That's not even the end of the ingredients in our perfect shitstorm, right? Because then, when 9.1 did come out, I mean, let's be honest, it's shit. That's not to actually disparage the content in 9.1, because some people enjoyed it, some people didn't, whatever. The problem with 9.1, apart from the massively long wait for it, was that it was set in the Maw. We just spent 8 months grinding the Maw. And then 9.1 was set in the Maw. So people who had waited vigilantly for the new patch, it was like so hard to get excited about Korthia. And people who had stopped playing, which was a lot of people, were just like, why the fuck would I come back for more of this? Why would I come back for more? That looks exactly like the game I left. Like, they saw trailers and stuff for 9.1, and they were like, that looks like the game I decided to stop playing. Why? Like, that's not going to bring me back, is it? And it was so sad. And we had a Maw-themed raid. The new world content was invasions in the Maw. The new zone was part of the Maw. There was a new part of the Maw. New world bosses in the Maw. And it was just like, holy shit. Look, I was absolutely fine with not being able to mount in the Maw at the beginning of the expansion, honestly. Whatever, man. But, I mean, you know, if 9.1 had come 100 days sooner, and we'd been allowed to mount in the Maw, would not have been an issue. And this is the problem, right? So not only do you get bored of a patch if it's open for 8 months, but the obvious things that can be changed to improve it don't happen if no patches happen, right? So yeah, we got to mount in the Maw in 9.1, and if 9.1 had come at a decent time, that would have been fine. It didn't, did it? Am I the only one who thought Korthia was quite different from the Maw? Yeah, it was different enough, but it was still attached to the Maw. It still sent you into the Maw an awful lot. Like, the main thrust of the gameplay in 9.1 was still centered around the Maw. When you opened up the map, you saw the Maw. It was just more, and it was slightly different aesthetic to the Maw, but it was still there. It still felt like the Maw. And the raid was in the Maw, and the raid was more themed, and like it was just very much more. But you are right. You know, like Korthia as a zone, I didn't mind, like, on its own terms. Like, in isolation, Korthia wasn't so bad, but it didn't exist in isolation. It existed in the context of a patch. And when it exists in the context of the patch, all of that context is important. Like, how long did we wait for it? Like, what did it replace? What was this, the new content afterwards? You know, how long did we have to wait in 9.1 before more content came around? And that was too long a wait as well. So we waited too long for 9.1, and 9.1 lasted too long too, because everything lasted too long in Shadowlands because the patch cadence was terrible. So all of these things combined meant that, I mean, if you had a friend that stopped playing WoW in Shadowlands, chances are it was in 9.1. Chances are it was 9.1. And the issue is the pacing, but also with that in mind, it's impossible to look back at 9.1 and not conclude that with everything else being equal, we can't pretend that it wasn't a shorter patch. It wasn't. In hindsight, it was a huge mistake to base it in the mall. A really, really big mistake to base that patch, which we waited 8 months for, around the aesthetic of the mall and the location of the mall. And like all the armor sets were like more themed, and there's just a lot, wasn't there? And what that does is it aggravates all of the other niggly little problems that people have with it. So every problem becomes a huge thing at that point. Because people are just frustrated and annoyed. And, with the scandal as well, which, a very, very good reason to not want to play WoW, frankly. The explosion of a game like Final Fantasy XIV, and Final Fantasy XIV, absolute banger game. And a lot of people started playing that game, and they'd gone from waiting 8 months for not very much in WoW to having 7 years worth of Final Fantasy XIV to play. They went from like waiting ages for new content in WoW, and when it came, it was a bit like the old content, which they didn't really like. And they went from that to having 7 years worth of game to play. And that feels amazing, right? And you're like, shit. Like, everyone was like, there's so much content in Final Fantasy XIV. It's like, yeah, you've got 7 years worth of game that you haven't played. Of course there's loads. What do you like? If you haven't played WoW before, there's loads of WoW. So yeah, and like 14's a great game, and I'm really, really glad that let's be real, if you watch all the cutscenes in MSQ to the end of Shadowbringers, not even Endwalker, you watch over 80 hours of cutscene just by playing through to the end of Shadowbringers. 80 hours of cutscene. Yeah, there's a lot to get through in Final Fantasy XIV. Last I played was before Christmas. But yeah, and I'm right. Like, I think it's fantastic that people love that game. It was a shame that people felt the need to pit the games up against each other. And more importantly, the communities decided to pit themselves against each other. I feel like that was really, really sad. I feel like no true Final Fantasy XIV player really wanted that. Because, it always annoyed me when WoW players would shit on Final Fantasy XIV. And it annoyed me when 14 used to shit on WoW as well. I just don't like it. And in fairness, and this was all stoked by ex-WoW players in the Final Fantasy XIV community as well, by the way. This is not old school Final Fantasy XIV community doing this. But it got a little bit deranged at points. The hate that ex-WoW players were throwing at WoW in the name of Final Fantasy XIV, it got a little bit deranged. Do you remember that time when Zereth Mortis came out and there were these memes going around of all the things that WoW was copying from Final Fantasy XIV? And it was the weakest fucking shit. The biggest fucking stretches. They were comparing that zone with the floating fucking castle in Endwalker to fucking Bastion and shit like that. And it's like, holy shit, man, so sad. Yeah, it was really, really, really bad. And it was WoW refugees that were doing that. It was not old school Final Fantasy XIV players by any means, because old school Final Fantasy XIV players got very used to keeping their fucking heads down, honestly. Like, if I ever talked about Final Fantasy XIV, people would just like shout me down, tell me how shit it was and how no one played it, etc. Right? So yeah, I find that a bit silly. But so yeah, all of these things have gone to create an environment where basically not many people are playing WoW right now. And the thing is, the change in WoW happened during Shadowlands. Famously, well, not famously, actually, I guess it's not that well known, because so many people stopped playing in 9.1 perfectly reasonably, if you ask me. I think I wouldn't be surprised if 9.1 saw the for a patch in WoW, and I include like opening patches in that. Well, I don't include opening patches in that, obviously, because the drop off in opening patches is huge. But I think for a patch, I think 9.1 must have seen the biggest drop-off in subs ever. That's really sad, but understandable. And, like, that has an effect. It affects Shadowlands, but even more so, it's always going to affect the expansion after. And Dragonflight is paying the price for Shadowlands' mistakes, unfortunately. It's a shame, but it is what it is. And so all WoW can do at the moment, honestly, is what they're doing. That's all WoW can do. All WoW can do is make a banging fucking game. Check, they have. Which retains players. Player retention in Dragonflight, fantastic. Like, off the chart. People, when they play this game, they stick playing it. Because WoW are doing it right. They're giving us loads of content. Huge patch cadence. Like, the ethos and the philosophy of it is all, like, spot on. It's a great game. It's a really good game. And that's all they can do. What else can they do? They're spending money. They're making content. It's good content. They've got it on a really good conveyor belt right now. But yeah, obviously the community is much, much smaller than it's probably ever been. That's the thing, right? The WoW community, the retail community, probably the classic community as well, is smaller than it's probably ever been. My shard is super lively. Look, if I log into Korthia, if I log into Valdrakken right now, we will see a lot of people around here. There'll be a ton of people in Valdrakken right now. I'm on a busy server, a huge, like, Valdrakken cannot fit a whole server's worth of people in the center of Valdrakken. There's actually not that many people here, but, a healthy amount of people, plenty of people. And, as the day goes on, more and more people appearing all the time. Here we go. But, there's loads of people around here. And, the fact is, a server can feel very busy with a fraction of the amount of people on that server actually being online. And Argent Dawn has multiple Valdrakken shards. Yeah, so basically, Valdrakken's always going to be full. But that's still good. I mean, you can only fill it with what's there. And yeah, like, how many subs does WoW have nowadays? No one knows. But I think estimates are around 1 million, which compared to other MMOs is still fucking brilliant. Any other MMO would, like, bite your hand off for that. But for WoW, obviously, that's very bad. And you can see it. You can see it in the views on content and stuff as well. Like, our views and Bell's views and stuff like that. Our YouTube videos are getting the same kind of views that 14 videos get. Which sucks. But it's just what it is. It's just where the community is right now. And WoW are doing what they have to do. WoW are doing the right thing right now. They are making a good game. And they're making a really good game. And that's all they can do. All they can do is put out a fucking good game and hope that when players do kind of trickle back, because they will, everyone gets that WoW itch from time to time, and the good thing is, just about everyone who isn't playing the game at the moment, I guess we're clutching at straws a little bit here, but most of the people who aren't playing the game right now, because they gave up in 9.1 or whenever, I feel like most people know the game is good. I think most people are aware that people genuinely like WoW right now, and that Dragonflight is a good expansion. Tally, don't you think the end of the pandemic has a significant effect on that? No, I don't think so, no. Like, I think most people who aren't playing the game, even if they're not playing the game, even if they have no desire to come back to the game right now, most of them know, or the community is really happy with Dragonflight. So, we'll see. All WoW can do is keep putting out the fucking content. And, I'm loving WoW right now. Oh, man. And I love making content for WoW right now. It's just so good. It feels really great. And if we're making a bit less money, then so be it. I think a lot of people are still going to be stuck on the bad feeling they had if they left in 9.1. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's perfectly reasonable, honestly. Like I say, there is still time. There's still time for 9.1 to go down as the patch that killed WoW. Because, it's not guaranteed that WoW is going to survive this. If we get to the end of 9.1, if we get to the end of Dragonflight, and, there's no doubt that Blizz have pushed the boat out on Dragonflight. There's no doubt that they have hired, like, 100 new devs. They are pumping that content. But if they get to the end of this expansion, they're like, well, you know what? The numbers haven't recovered as much as we'd hoped, and it's maintenance mode for you. It could happen. And if that happens, then it won't be Dragonflight's fault. It'll be 9.1's fault. It makes Blizz the most money out of their games. Oh yeah, sure, but they might feel like they could make as much money out of the game without putting as much into it. They're like, okay, so at the moment, all our money is coming from services and store and stuff like that. And, an ever decreasing amount of our money is actually coming from subs. So why the fuck do we need to retain subs? Like, our best business option here is to cut 200 devs and just focus on those whales, which is what a lot of other games do. 99% of MMOs exist on a very small handful of whales, which WoW doesn't have to do, but they might decide that's best from a bottom line point of view. They might be, because they don't give a fuck. Whoever's looking at the spreadsheets and making these decisions high up in Activision, right? They don't give a fuck about the community. All they care about is maximum return for their investors in 1 year, not even long term. So it's quite feasible that WoW could, change dramatically in the resources that are put into it. So we just got to hope that doesn't happen. We just got to hope that players do come back to the game and enjoy this really, really good expansion, because it is a really good expansion. Do you feel hopeful for the future of WoW? It's hard not to feel hopeful for the future of WoW when it is still the most successful MMO and is also really, really good. That's the thing that gives me genuine hope for WoW, is that it's really good. If there is hope right now, it's the best sort of hope, which is the fact that Dragonflight is an absolute, genuine, stone-cold banger, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of hope to take from that. I'm confident. People ask me on the stream a lot, like, should I come back for Dragonflight? Should I come back and play Dragonflight? Is it worth it? When people used to say that to me in BFA and Shadowlands, particularly obviously in Shadowlands, I was like, what can I say, man? I'm playing, it's better in these ways. This is a problem with it at the moment. It's going to be very much like a personal opinion sort of thing. Dragonflight is the first expansion since that I can honestly and without irony and without doubt go, I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is worth coming back for Dragonflight. Like, I would be very surprised if someone came back to Dragonflight and did not enjoy it. Whereas I could absolutely understand if someone didn't enjoy Shadowlands and BFA. Because, and also, like, the vibe in the community is really, really good. And, I hate to say this, but the vibe in the WoW community has been really good ever since a load of people left for Final Fantasy XIV. And, maybe you'll never, ever come back to the game ever in your entire life. But maybe one day, and no loss really, it's just a video game at the end of the day. But maybe you'll wake up one day and you'll have that little itch, and you'll just be like, I just fancy logging into WoW, right? I just fancy it. And it's much nicer to have a really cool expansion like Dragonflight to log into in that situation, So, and that's how WoW are going to get their players back, is by just making sure the game is good. And so when those people do cautiously stick their head around the door, when they do very cautiously dip their toe back in the water, what they find is a game that is much, much better than the one they left. That's all that WoW can do. And they're doing it. So that's where my hope is, yeah. So I am hopeful. But I'm also a realist. I'm also not stupid. I can also see that the game is, in other ways that aren't connected to the quality of the game, in the doldrums, yeah, for sure. I don't think anyone would tell you otherwise. Certainly not from a content creator point of view. I think most content creators would happily just turn around to you right now and go, oh yeah, WoW views are down the fucking pan. It is what it is. It won't affect me. I'll keep making my WoW content. If I have to get another job as well, so be it. I had a job when I started making WoW content. I've been lucky enough to make WoW content for the last 6 years professionally. If I end up having to do something else, is what it is. To be fair, creators made hate videos that got a lot of views for Shadowlands. Yeah, I feel like creators did kind of shoot themselves in the foot a little bit with that. Couldn't be me. I like to think that looking back on Shadowlands, I'm quite proud of the relatively level head that I kept compared to some other creators. Some other people will say that was a fault of mine at the time, but I look back on it. I look back on our BFA and Shadowlands content, and I'm actually quite proud of it. I'm proud of how we didn't churn out hate shit. And the game's really good. The game's great, so I would recommend you come back. Having said that, I don't fucking play it on stream, do I? So how would you know?